Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot. In this office, we try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. Unfortunately, the we part is going to be I today because Angry Mike is having technical difficulties and is unable to log in. So I'm on my own. I'm going to get this out right here and right now. I really hate the douchebags that I'm going to be talking about today. And that would be self-proclaimed constitutional auditors and sovereign citizens. Both of these groups of people pose a significant risk to law enforcement and to the public at large. And that's because they believe their cause is righteous, and because of this belief, they employ just about any mechanism to facilitate their rights, to include engaging law enforcement and just about anyone they believe is in their way. In this episode of Office of the Patriot, we're going to discuss the lunacy of constitutional auditors and sovereign citizens who are really just looking for a fight. Constitutional auditors, or First Amendment auditors, claim they are a legitimate part of the press and they are fighting for the right to film and photograph for constitutional oversight of our government. The auditor part is from their engagement, usually forceful and derogatory engagement of law enforcement, public officials, elected officials, or hell, just about anyone they view as authoritarian, like a CEO of a public utility. However, many of these douchebags are in it for the clicks and not to bring public attention to an injustice. And what I mean by this is that they upload their videos to YouTube and a number of other social media platforms, soliciting donations to bring more content. And generally, the more titillating and violent the content is, the more donations that person will receive. Here's a short video that was produced by a local news station in Detroit, Michigan that highlights the confrontational behavior these douchebags employ.
They call themselves First Amendment auditors and citizen journalists. They're on social media and known for getting in people's faces. Well, now the state is instructing its 50,000 employees on how to respond to these types of verbal attacks. But we also wanted to hear from the people responsible for these so-called fraudits. So tonight, a popular social media star is opening up to 7 Action News reporter Jim Kirchner about what's at stake.
Please don't.
Oh, they're grabbing me. They're grabbing me. Am I being detained?
Hey, don't grab me, dude. Get out of here. I want to too.
You made contact with me. What's your name and badge number, officer?
Hey, do you want to tell me your name? Because I'll be happy to help you out.
There you go, guys. The walk of shame.
Freedom News Now has been posting videos for several years. The person behind it, Justin McDermott.
There has never been a better time than now to do your First Amendment audit.
Can you tell me what you're doing? Anything? We had somebody calling about you being out here.
This video is from 2017. McDermott is outside the Warren Tank Plant, a federal contractor. He's wearing a full face mask, long before COVID, refusing to answer questions about who he is, why he's there, and if he has any weapons.
I mean, these people present themselves. I mean, officers are killed in the line of duty, trying to do exactly what Officer Reed and those officers were doing.
Are they asking legitimate questions?
Oftentimes they are legitimate questions, and I'm okay with questions from officers, and my auditing style has changed throughout the years.
There's absolutely no doubt that he was attempting to provoke the officers.
Stop, please don't.
Oh, they're grabbing me. They're grabbing me. Am I being detained?
The police commissioner says the plan can be to get even more.
File a lawsuit. They're going to get a settlement from a city. They're possibly going to get the officer terminated.
The trend prompted this email to go out to 50,000 state employees, telling them how to uphold the general rights of the public while remaining vigilant for suspicious behavior. The email continues. The encounters often include behavior that's designed to provoke a reaction that could be viewed as a violation of First Amendment rights. Do you believe that some behavior is deliberately provocative?
Next question.
The email continues. The most important thing to do is to remain calm and pleasant.
Hey, do you want to tell me your name? Because I'll be happy to help you out.
In another video outside a prison in Adrian, McDermott is shooting video with 2 cameras when he's approached first by prison officials and says this.
They abuse their inmates every day. Most of them abuse their wives.
You don't know that when you're out there.
Yeah, they don't know any of that about myself either.
Get this, McDermott says this is the key to his First Amendment audits.
There's nothing to hide, then there should be nothing to fear.
At the end of his videos, when police walk away, he draws conclusions, often calling them First Amendment fails.
There goes the walk of shame, guys.
These are YouTube channels. Part of it is entertainment value.
Hey, don't grab me, dude. Get out of here.
A couple of weeks ago, another team of 3 First Amendment auditors were confronted by the Saginaw County Undersheriff. He says he wanted to get video of their faces. This was their second visit to that department. Their first visit was in the lobby a few days earlier, shooting videos through windows. The undersheriff says several young women employees are inside.
Extremely uncomfortable because they want to know, why is this guy recording me and what are they going to do with the recordings of me?
After this incident, the men filed a complaint with Michigan State Police. The undersheriff says that made a record of who they are.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Go ahead, do your investigation. I went out there so that if something were to happen to one of my employees, I can say these 3 gentlemen were here.
I told the undersheriff about my questions and lack of answers from Justin McDermott.
They believe it only works one way. If they're truly the media, then aren't they subject to the same rules as what apply to you?
McDermott tells me he posts his videos for comments and discussion. He sells merchandise. He seeks subscribers. He wants to grow his online audience. It is all his First Amendment right. In Warren, Jim Kurtzner, 7 Action News.
Okay, I know I've said douchebag quite a few times, and well, I just can't come up with a better description for these people. I know some of you are probably thinking to yourself that because I'm a retired law enforcement officer, that my assessment is biased, and that's fair. I'm sure there is some bias I'm introducing into my assessment of many constitutional auditors. For what it's worth, I do realize the necessity of the press, and it's never been more paramount now because there's been a growing amount of instances where officers have used force or maybe they've deprived someone of their rights under the color of authority. Many of us saw the videos during COVID lockdowns where law enforcement acted well outside of their authority when dealing with some of the public's reluctance to obey unconstitutional COVID protocols. The problem I have with constitutional auditors is twofold. First, they claim that they are the press and as such have constitutional protections, but that's just bullshit. A real journalist who is a constitutional auditor doesn't inject themselves into a situation. He or she acts as an observer first and maybe an investigator next. The true goal of legitimate journalism is to report the issue without becoming part of the story. They document what they find and even go as far as getting both sides of the conflict. These constitutional auditors don't do that. Their goal is to foment a confrontation between themselves and the target, hoping that the target screws up by depriving them of their rights, or maybe they violate a department policy during the confrontation. And that brings me to the next point. Their confrontational nature puts themselves, innocent bystanders, and law enforcement in danger. Many times, these douchebags will go to a private business or even a church that they disagree with to harass people coming and going to the location. And it's one thing to harass a peace officer by calling them a tyrant or a thug or a bitch-ass cop. But it's a completely different thing to harass someone in the public who doesn't have the requirement to treat the douchebag professionally. If they're lucky, they'll just be pushed or maybe chin-checked. But there have been instances where higher levels of force were used against them. Next, and arguably the most dangerous whack job, is the sovereign citizen. There are numerous origins for sovereign citizen groups, but they all originate from the idea that the federal government, and in some cases state governments, have no sway over them. Now, you'll get a number of sources for where the sovereign citizen derives their ideas of sovereignty, their status as a free person. but it all comes from the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation was essentially a handshake agreement of cooperation between the first 13 colonies. Although they called themselves the United States of America, it was more like a collective states of America. The federal government that was established under the Articles of Confederation was really devoid of any real power. They couldn't tax and they couldn't regulate commerce. This neutered federal government was recognized by James Madison and George Washington as a weak link between the states. And then they worked to establish a new constitutional convention in 1787, which produced the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights that we have today. And since the federal government was devoid of any power prior to the Constitution, the sovereign citizen uses and believes that the Articles of Confederation is the true law of the land. So, if you have people who believe that the federal law and most state law doesn't apply to them, and the fact that many of them are totally unhinged, they will invariably have law enforcement contact. In these next couple of videos, you'll see how dangerous these people can become.
42-year-old David Bruce and 67-year-old Devin Newman are members of the anti-government sovereign citizen movement, and for 5 months, Las Vegas police have been watching them.
As the investigation progressed, we became aware that these two individuals were extremists in their beliefs and were actively plotting to kidnap and kill at least one Southern Nevada police officer. The suspects further believed once the first kidnapping and execution was accomplished, they would be compelled to keep repeating their actions, kidnapping and killing multiple officers.
Important to mention here, the FBI lists members of this anti-government movement among the nation's top domestic terror threats. Police say the two found a vacant house. They rigged it with bolts drilled into wall supports, creating a makeshift jail where they plan to hold captive officers, try them in a court of their own laws, and then kill them.
A Fresno woman now says she wants to meet with deputies in the state of Florida to apologize. That is after her son, a former Fresno State student, was killed in a shootout while trying to kill deputies in Florida.
Fox 26 reporter Sophia Alessio shares what one Florida sheriff is saying about that shootout and the impact his time at Fresno State had on his state of mind. Sophia?
Liz and Monty, 26-year-old Karen Campbells, who went by K-Mac Elbay, claimed that he was part of a Moorish sovereign citizen. And when deputies from Polk County approached him Saturday, he told them that it was his right to not give them his identification. And sheriffs say that K-Mac was radicalized while he was here at Fresno State. Just after midnight Saturday, 26-year-old Karen Cables, who went by K-Mac Elbay, was approached by deputies just outside of Tampa, Florida. They were looking for burglars at a park, and since K-Mac Elbay was at the park after hours, deputies asked him to show his ID, but he refused. That's when Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said a deputy noticed K-Mac was dressed in an all-white religious outfit and called for backup when he wasn't cooperating.
His car started rolling, they grabbed the window, and all of a sudden, he started shooting.
Judd said K-Mac fired 5 rounds, hitting 2 different deputies, leaving both in critical condition. K-Mac Elbay was also shot and died at the scene. Judd says K-Mac identified himself as a Moorish sovereign citizen, a group Judd says typically refuses to obey laws and government regulations.
They're dangerous, and you don't know when.
So you can see that sovereign citizens are a huge threat to law enforcement, but they also pose a huge threat to the community. Most of them believe that they are law savvy, maybe pseudo lawyers, if you will, probably because they're nuts. They'll file fake documents with the court or with the DMV to establish fake identities and even file liens against property for their own benefit. Think squatters' rights. Most sovereigns don't recognize any law enforcement authority. Well, maybe except for one, occasionally, the county sheriff. So even local police are viewed as illegitimate law enforcement officials. This belief comes from the Posse Comitatus Act, which bars military from participating in civilian law enforcement except under specific circumstances. This act was co-opted by sovereign citizen groups who believed that only elected officials, such as a county sheriff, have any legal authority. Most of these morons like to use convoluted legal jargon, like the kind that you hear from jailhouse lawyers who walk around with a dog-eared copy of Black's Legal Dictionary. And I find it funny that they claim they are divesting themselves of any federal trappings such as driver's licenses and social security cards and bank accounts. Yet, they have no problem filing fake common law liens to try to steal someone's property or try to steal fiat money, even though they allegedly don't believe in that either because it's not backed by the gold standard. The hypocrisy of these idiots is astounding. And given that they are idiots with a grudge, they pose a pretty serious threat to anyone they come in contact with. In all, the purpose of today's presentation isn't giving a pass to peace officers and to government officials that abuse their authority. In fact, you could argue that the causality of corrupt law enforcement and government officials gave rise to the constitutional auditor and sovereign citizen, a textbook example of you reap what you sow. So, if you're a douchebag cop, bureaucrat, politician, knock that shit off because you're making it more difficult for the people who just want to do a good job and go home with the same number of holes they started the day with. This concludes today's presentation of Office of the Patriot. And if you enjoyed the content, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share our channel on your social media. Because YouTube is also a douchebag and has been successfully hiding this channel despite our best efforts. Also, please take the time to comment. Engagement is the major metric social media platforms like YouTube and Rumble employ in their search algorithms. The more people that like and comment, the more the Office of the Patriot channel comes up when social and political content like this is searched for. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.